AUS and Canada. So we've had an interesting day talking about mentoring in associations. Our plan for you today is to cover some of these topics, which I think we shared with you, the list. So we're going to start with talking about some of the research that we did. We did one piece of research for which there's already an insight report on our website. I know some of you have already downloaded it. If you haven't, please go and look at that. It's quite an interesting piece of research. And we're doing more all the time. So we'll talk about some of the research findings that we've developed, but also from other research around the world. So it's really a conversation about what's happening in mentoring, in particular in associations, but starting with some of our research was particularly around millennials. Just a little bit about us. Our company is called Horizons Unlimited. We're mentoring and coaching specialists. We have our mentoring products and services marketed under the Art of Mentoring brand. So if you're looking for mentoring, you go look at our Art of Mentoring website, which the web address is on the screen. We focus on and we do research, particularly in the domain of mentoring in membership organisations. We started our involvement with mentoring nearly 20 years ago with a program we commenced for women working in the marketing field, which was my first profession before I got into this work. And that's where we grew to really understand and love the whole idea of mentoring within the context of an association or a membership organisation. We're part of a bigger global network called Coaching and Mentoring International. So we have linked up with mentoring consultants around the world, and we share best practice, understanding and research between us. I think we're now in 24 countries around the world. We're also on the board of an organisation called ISMPE, which is a standards body looking at what's best practice for mentoring in the workplace. And I'll refer to that a little bit later and give you the web address. It's really worth going to that website and having a look. We consider ourselves leaders in technology-enabled mentoring. You'll notice that Alex and I both share the same surname. That's because we're actually a mother and son combo here. So we lead the business and Alex is really driving the technology side of how to make mentoring really work using technology. So we're going to stop from time to time and invite questions and invite comments and sharing. We'd really love it if people who are already running mentoring programs, so I know some of you are already running programs. There are some of you on this webinar today that are here because you're not running a program yet, and we really believe you can learn from one another. So we want to give an opportunity for that as well. So please get involved. We love people to talk at our webinars. We don't want to make it a one-way conversation. But I'll get the ball rolling maybe with a few slides and then we'll open it up. So just recapping, as I said, you can download that research, but here's some of the highlights really. We started with talking to people about, what's happening with you with regard to attracting younger members to your associations. And this really is a global issue. So it's not just a problem here, it's a problem. So we did our research in US, Canada, India, Australia, New Zealand. Everybody agreed pretty much that it's hard and getting harder to attract young members to associations. But you also said there's really no silver bullet. It's all about being relevant and learning how to engage young people perhaps in a different way because they're wanting different things from their membership organisations. We do know though that young people are actually yearning for career and professional development, and increasingly it seems to be moving up the priority list for in terms of demand that young people have from their membership organisation. So we see this as something that's growing. Mentoring's been around for a long time in a formal structured way. It's been in organisations for probably something under 40 years now, but we think there's huge growth at the moment, which is fueled by a number of things, but it's something that young people in particular seem to be wanting. So mentoring is a part of the solution. It's not the only part of the solution, but it is something that many people in our study said, we really think mentoring should be or could be a key focus to help us attract and retain younger members. The other thing that was interesting was it appears that mentoring is something that people struggle with doing well. So they find it difficult to work out how to design the program. They don't know where to start, perhaps. They don't know how to get funding for it or how to work out a business plan for it. They don't know how to get the resources together. And of the people that we're currently surveying, we're discovering only about a 60% satisfaction rate with the programs that associations are already running, which says to us there's still a lot to learn in this space, and if we can help people get to better practice, that's really our aim. We say when we're training people in our programs, we don't want them to have a good mentoring experience, we want them to have a great mentoring experience. And so that's really what we're aiming for our clients. So that was the background. Just briefly, it might help to just share what we think mentoring actually is. This is a definition of what we call developmental mentoring, which is the model of mentoring that we prefer. I think possibly when it first started going into organisations, mentoring was a little bit more the old-fashioned master and apprentice model, where you had a very experienced mentor who would share their pearls of wisdom and expect that a mentee or a protege, as often they're called, would adopt every piece of advice and do everything that the mentor says. I think we've moved on from there, and good mentors are much more likely to be what we call developmental mentors. So in other words, they enter into a relationship whereby there's an exchange of knowledge, experience and goodwill. So whilst they're helping the person gain confidence, maybe clearer purpose, insight and wisdom, they're doing it in a way that's building capacity in the mentee. So it's not all about just telling them what to do. It's about helping them work through their issues and problems and guiding them and doing other things with them other than just maybe talking. They might go off and do things with the mentee, or they might introduce them to people. So that's our model of mentoring. Why we think mentoring is so important for associations is, firstly, we do believe it's a great tool to attract and retain members. We know that organisations that have mentoring programs find it helps them to build a more attractive brand. We also know from people that we work with that people engaged in a mentoring program are much more engaged in the association itself and with other members, which is something I think you're probably all trying to build. The second point is probably something you've thought a little bit less about, which is how can we use mentoring a bit strategically? So not just because our members are telling us that they maybe want mentoring or that maybe we think mentoring is a good idea, but what's our higher order purpose? What are we here for? What are we here to deliver for our profession or for our industry or for somehow our constituents? And how can mentoring fulfill on that purpose? So we'll give some examples of that a little later, and that's probably one of the key takeaways I'd love you to leave this webinar with, which is, what's the bigger purpose that's being served by having mentoring for our organisation. We also know from research that teaching people mentoring skills actually develops their leadership capacity, and this is wonderful for building leadership within both the organisations perhaps that your members are in, but also leadership for the profession and the industry that you're in and your association. So we work with some clients who attach mentoring programs to leadership programs for young professionals, whereby they're giving them some leadership training and then connecting them with a mentor who can help them embed that learning. The fourth area is really, I think for too long we've thought about mentoring as something that only provides a member benefit and not something that can actually break even or make a profit. And I guess the other big message we'd love you to take away is if you build it right, there's no reason to lose money. as a minimum. And we know that there are some organisations that are actually managing to make a little bit of money from their mentoring initiatives. So we'll talk a bit about how to do that. But I'd like to go on.
So just in our last webinar, those last couple of points inspired a couple of questions. So
yeah,
if anyone's got any questions around any of those points, I mean, we'll get further into detail, but has anyone got any particular questions that they'd like to ask now? Please use the chat box to write any questions, and we'll do our best to answer them now.
And I'd like to throw it open also to hear from some of you who are already running mentoring programs, what you think your mentoring initiatives are delivering to you as an organisation, or to your members, or to your wider profession and community. So I probably can't open all the microphones at once because there's too many people, but it would be great to hear from a couple of you. So if you're willing to maybe share your thoughts, just put something in the chat box and we'll try and open your mic. Or maybe even put the comment in, you know, what's mentoring delivering to you as an organisation, because we can all learn from that. So while you're thinking about that, Kay's asked a question. Do you have to make the mentoring program available to all members or just a selection? Okay, we will talk about that, Kay. We see a number of different ways of doing it. One is to open it up to the general membership. Another is to be a little more segmented in and targeted in the approach. And I'll show you some of the target groups that typically associations are using. Any other questions, or anyone share what they think they're getting out of having a mentoring program in their organisation? Okay, let's move on. So I wanted to just share with you a little bit more around some of those ideas for strategic purpose. So these are a couple of examples of organisations that we work with. If you look at the different benefits that people can derive from mentoring, you've got 3 on the left, which are, you know, really positive, if you like, capacity building impacts like increasing confidence. I've never run a mentoring program yet that participants don't walk away and say, you know, I've really built my confidence, and that's mentors as well, interestingly. Helping people prevent the kind of mistakes that we all made when we started our careers, helping them build skills. And for this organisation, it was all about how do you actually help people who are running their own business. They're part of a community of business owners. So mentoring is really doing those things with the intention of helping them build their business success. On the right-hand side, we've got some of the more emotional support type benefits. So gives emotional support is they're building coping skills to deal with maybe difficult issues or stressors when they come up. In some of the organisations we work with, you know, Australia's a big country. You've got people maybe working in regional areas where they can be a bit isolated. This particular instance, I'm actually thinking about the Australian Veterinarian Association, where one of the regions actually started a mentoring program in response to a couple of suicides in their community that occurred amongst some young vets. Now, we're not saying that a mentor can necessarily stop people being depressed or, you know, God forbid, committing suicide. What we are saying is having a mentor can help reduce the isolation and maybe reduce some of the stress. So what we do in that particular program is we equip the mentors with some additional tools around how to recognise mental health issues and how to manage the situation if something comes up, and how to refer people on, because obviously we don't want them being out of their depth. So these are some examples of some of those kind of higher order purpose or impacts that you might want to think about if your association is facing some difficult issues right now. Kay asked before about having a program for all members or just a selection. you'll see these are some of the different models that we're observing and people are feeding back to us in our research. Some people are running their programs at a very local level and very face-to-face. Others are delivering it nationally, and others still are going completely global. Many people are still running programs face-to-face, but increasingly we're seeing a move to virtual, and we're going to talk about 2 case studies in that space. Mostly people are using the one-to-one model of mentoring. So one mentor to one mentee. Some are using one mentor to a couple of mentees. Some are using an informal approach, which is, tends to be we'll put some mentor bios up on our website. We'll let people go and self-select. We won't give them a lot of structure, and they can run their own mentoring relationships all the way through to a very formal structured program. And there's probably more that we're seeing in that bucket than the informal bucket. There's examples of peer mentoring, reverse mentoring. I mean, if you want to know about these, go look at our website. We've got lots of materials there. Mostly what we see is regular mentoring, which is pairing up someone who's more experienced with someone who's less experienced rather than a peer. Okay, this is your answer. So typically we're seeing programs targeted at students, at graduates, at young professionals, maybe minority groups, so trying to tackle diversity. Often it's women, so we see lots of programs for women. We'd love to see more programs starting to target, a little bit higher up the career chain, so maybe mid-career or later career. We know that, as the baby boomers age and move towards retirement, maybe they might need to change career quite reluctantly at times. There's going to be a lot of disruption and loss of jobs. We think there's going to be a need for mentoring later career people very soon. Another difference could be whether people are self-serving or they have an administrator match. Mostly we're seeing administrator matching. And then is it high touch support or low touch support? Low touch is just pair them up and let them go. Higher touch is we keep in touch with them. We make sure that their mentoring relationships are getting off the ground. So maybe again, just pause there and get some feedback. Are these the kinds of approaches that you're using? Do you have any questions around that? We've got some people here from different associations.
Do you have any additions to any of that? Is there anything that you noticed that we may have missed in that list? Or is there something that you're doing that isn't there?
Okay, let's move on to the case studies. I think everyone's in listening mode at the moment. We will open up for a general kind of Q&A at the end, so if you want to hold your questions till then, that's also fine. We've got 3 case studies to just quickly talk through today. There isn't time to go into any great depth, but we'll cover probably the highlights and just give you a sense of different program structures. So if you are just starting out and you don't quite know how to design your program, this might be helpful. 2 of these are virtual programs, one of which we've been involved with, which is the Aura e-mentoring program. Another one, which is the Cherie Blair Foundation. Cherie, of course, is married to Tony Blair, the ex-Prime Minister of the UK. Terrific global program, which was designed by my colleague, Professor David Clutterbuck in the UK. What these 2 programs have in common is that they're run completely by distance. There are no face-to-face relationships either between the program managers and the participants, and there's also no face-to-face contact between the participants unless they're lucky enough that they've been paired up with someone in the same geography, and that does happen sometimes. The training is completely conducted online, and the program events are conducted by webinar. So the first example is run by Aura, Australian Women in Resources Alliance, which is an initiative put out by AMA, an association for mining and metals. The issue that Aura had was looking at how do we actually increase the level of female participation in our industry. So there was quite a low participation rate. So this program was completely aimed at supporting women to try and not only attract more women to the resources sector, but also to keep them in the sector, particularly at key transition points like when they go and have a family, and maybe help them transition back into work after they've had their kids and they're going back to work. Sorry, I'll just go up one. The program has rolled out around 400 pairs since 2013 in small cohorts, and the reason it was designed that way was we wanted to give people access to the mentoring within the next couple of months from the time that they really wanted to have a mentor. Most programs have 1 or maybe 2 intakes a year, so often people are waiting for, up to a year to get into a program. In this way, because it's rolled out every few months, people can get straight into a program. The other reason to have it in small cohorts, and we're talking under 20 mentees at a time, is in our webinars they get a chance to really connect and talk with one another. And for women particularly who are in maybe isolated communities on remote mine sites, that's pretty important that they can connect with other women who are maybe going through the same thing. I think we have Adriana on the call, so I'm just going to make a few points and then maybe, because Adriana is from AUS, so she might be able to say a few words and answer questions as well. We started doing the training by webinar in our first couple of cohorts, and we were not very satisfied with the quality of that. So in the end, we developed an online training. This is particularly relevant for training mentors because one of the training areas that you need to think about with mentors is the mentoring skills of things like listening and asking questions and guiding rather than going straight into giving advice. And, when do I give advice and when do I move to a different kind of stance? So we have moved completely to online training, and that seems to be very successful. All the events are run by webinar, and by events I mean there'll be a program introduction where people are introduced to the program. We get them back for a progress review halfway through, and then a program close, because it's also quite important to give people closure to the mentoring relationships in what is a formal structured program. All the program administration is handled on an online program admin platform. The one that Aura is using is called Cronus, CHRONUS. If you are doing anything more than probably, well, we think 25 pairs, doing more than that manually is really hard, particularly when it comes to matching. But certainly these program admin platforms make the admin much easier, particularly when you're dealing with large numbers of participants. We know how our pairs are connecting. They're using phone, Skype, FaceTime, email, combination of those things. If they start by phone and that doesn't feel like it's working, then they might move to Skype. Maybe they're having chat, text messages in between. So they're using a variety of technologies. And we know, by the way, from academic research, there's a lot of evidence that says that virtual mentoring can be very effective. You probably just need a little bit more of a high-touch program administration to keep the mentoring pairs on track. And here's just some of the results that are being achieved. They're probably pretty much in line with what we would expect in a face-to-face program. Some good things to measure around: did the mentees achieve the goals they set for themselves? A good indicator of a quality relationship is if the mentees are saying they're going to stay in contact with their mentors after the program. And the last one is what we call a top box score. So we ask people to rate satisfaction. I think something like 60 or 70%, it was a good experience, but 17% have been saying it's one of the best things I've ever done. That's our top box. So that's the scores we're really looking for to indicate they haven't just had a good experience, they've had a great experience. So Adriana, I'm just going to open your mic. Is there anything very quickly you might want to add to that? And are there any questions for Adriana?
Hi, Melissa. Hello, everyone. I actually don't have anything to add in terms of what you've covered. except the fact that we were actually one of the main case studies that was chosen by the Australian government to be represented at the Global Women's Summit in Brazil in 2015. So we thought it was, considering that our program is government funded, it was a massive win for us. And of course, I have to agree with, in terms of Melissa, Alex, and their team's support in running the program. It's been fantastic, especially using the art mentoring training tool. A lot of our mentors and mentees find that tool very, very useful, and another source of information, as well as tips and tricks that they can fall back on if the ones that we already provide on our platform is not enough for them. So it's been really great working with Horizons Unlimited and the Art of Mentoring program.
Thanks, Adriana. Have you got any questions for Adriana? Because here's your chance to talk to someone who's got a very successful program running. Usually people want to know, how did she get government funding? And she'll tell you it was a lot of hard work and sweat. So we don't want to make it sound easy, but I guess Aura had a very compelling case to go to the government to say, look, we've really got a problem. We need, many more women in our industry. It's becoming a serious issue, and the government thought it was worth backing that. So any questions, type them in the chat box, or just tell us you want to ask a question and we'll open your mic. How much resource is required to maintain the program, asks Annabelle. Do you want to answer that, Adriana?
When you mean by resource, Annabelle, do you mean staff, or do you mean like the tools? Like what do you mean exactly?
Okay, Annabelle, you can talk. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Look, I'm just really interested more to know how many people need to sort of be hands-on while you're maintaining it. Like, how much support do you have to provide?
Yeah. So considering it is a government-funded program and the company has gone through a lot of structural changes at this point in time, at this point in time, it's one person, me, at the moment, because I did have two other people helping me towards the start of the program, in addition to the support provided by Melissa and Alex. But what we found is that once you have the program on the go in terms of the cohort intake and things like that, this is not the only program that I look after here at AMA. So what we do is we actually tag the business development and the intakes promotion part into the already running meetings that I have. And of course that meant that the administrative part, with the help of Corinth, has actually been really, really good. Just for me, I've only been doing the whole thing for the past 2 months, as I said, due to some restructure that we went through, but throughout the program we've had about 3 people.
Yeah,
okay,
I might say, and not 3 people all at once. The feedback we get from most of our clients, and of course it depends on how big your program is. If you're running a program with 700 pairs like the Australian Vet Association, I'll talk about them in a minute, you're probably going to need, a lot more hands-on time than if you're only running 20 pairs. Most of our clients say it's about 1/3 of a full-time equivalent. And there'll be times when it is very intense. So at the launch stage, a couple of months up to a new program launch, it'll probably be half time for somebody, or maybe, probably that. But then after that, it may only be a couple of calls, a couple of emails a month, and particularly if you're using a program admin platform.
Melissa, just adding to what you have to say, I think, Annabelle, what we need the most amount of effort in is building the number of mentors and mentees in our pool. And once that's done, the administrative part is quite straightforward. So we can just, as long as the person who's looking after it knows what to do, as well as the matching and things like that, it's all right. It's just that main business development part that needs a lot more effort, so we can have that pool of talent to match with, and that's what we continue to do on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. And someone's asked, feedback from mentors. Can you maybe address that, Adriana? So what's the feedback
The
we're getting?
feedback, yeah, so we definitely have a lot of good feedback from mentors. If you actually go to our website, which is awra.org.au, so aura.org.au, and just look for a tab that's called How We Help, and then go to Aura e-mentoring, as well as another tab that's called Case Studies. You'll be able to get access to some of the case studies that we have produced out of the program. Apart from that, majority of the mentors are actually quite happy with the mentees that they have been matched with, and not only that, gosh, I'm just trying to get the accurate number for you, over 65 to 70% of our past mentors have come back to the program to take on another mentee in the 9-month structured journey, as well as continuing to help their old mentee post the program. So we've had a really good sort of mentor uptake in terms of new entrants as well as returning mentors.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I hope that answers your question. I think that was from Cheryl. Thanks, Adriana. That's really helpful. I'm just going to answer one more question and then I'm going to go on to the next case study. Kay asked, what's the usual dropout rate over a 12-month period? Our programs can be different lengths, so sometimes they're 6 months, sometimes they're anything up to 12 months. We don't recommend shorter programs because there's not enough time for mentoring pairs to really build a relationship. We say a dropout rate of 10% is acceptable. If you're getting much higher dropout rates, then there's probably something going on in your program design that is causing that. And it could be around, so I'll just address this issue around training. It could be around training. So we know from Professor Clutterbuck's research that without any training at all, only 1 in 3 mentoring relationships will get off the ground. So that's start, let alone finish. If you train or give some level of training to the mentors, then you should double that success rate. So 2 out of 3 people will have a good traction in their mentoring relationship. If you train the mentees as well and perhaps other stakeholders, then you should really be getting up to something like 90% success rate. So by success rate, I mean they've engaged with, they've stayed with the program and they're satisfied with the experience. So hopefully that answers your question, Kay. So I'm going to very briefly talk about the Cherie Blair Foundation one, just to give you an example of a really large program that's running globally. This was set up specifically for women entrepreneurs in emerging and developing countries. It's been running for a couple of years now. It's all about helping them build businesses with the help of mentors from some other part of the world. In 4 years, they've actually had 1,500 women go through that program. So it's actually a really large program. They're in 80 different countries. I think this is an absolutely awesome program. It's 12 months. It's a one-to-one pairing. The women are matched with either female or male mentors. So there's, again, lots of evidence around the benefits of either male or female mentoring. We've got information around that on our website as well. These are the technologies people are using to connect with one another. It's supported with webinar events for the community, so all the people involved in this program. I think this is really impressive. They have over 50 partners from industry, government and non-profit sectors. So when you go to their website, and again, I've actually put a click through from here. We'll be sending you these slides, so hopefully the hyperlinks will work. You can go and look at some of these case studies. A lot of these partners are actually contributing money, so they've got good funding to help them run a really very large-scale, terrific program. I think that, this is on their website as well. Some of the results they're getting are awesome. Improved confidence, business skills, better communication. I love that 34% say that kept their business from going under. So, that's a terrific, and, again, you can imagine the higher order purpose around this one, which is around all the social impacts of having women entrepreneurs start up businesses in their countries. Fantastic program. The last one I wanted to talk about is not a virtual program, and I'll explain to you why we've set it up that way. This I mentioned before, the AVA, so it's the vets. They were coming from a position of, wanting, this is just one initiative. They've got many others to help them deal with some of these particular profession issues. It's really about mentoring, helping graduates prepare for their career ahead. So it supports them in their first year once they move out of uni. For some of them, they're still getting jobs. For some, they've already got a job, but they're making that transition in. Because they already had a program running in one local region, we were very careful to set up a steering committee of volunteers that, so each region had a volunteer on the committee, but we really wanted to involve the people that were already running a program, because we knew if the AVA just came in over the top saying, look, this is now a national program and we're going to do it differently now, that the people at the local level would not be happy with that and we would lose their support. So they got involved. We were able to come up with a kind of national design. There's a national bank of resources, but where possible, we're delivering the training and the other events face-to-face in each region. And the reason that we haven't gone online is they really wanted to build the community aspect of this, and they also wanted the mentors to be really well trained around some of the emotional support that was going to be required, and it was felt that possibly training them face-to-face would be more effective than the online training. Having said that, the mentors that can't turn up to the face-to-face still get the online training, so anyone in the program still gets trained. What they have done, though, is taken the administrative burden away from the regions by running all the admin centrally coordinated on one of those online admin platforms. So the volunteers are happy. They've had the stuff they don't want to be doing, which is, sometimes the matching and the sending of emails. All they've got to do, we've done a train the trainer with them. They deliver the training, they turn up to the events, but someone else is actually centrally coordinating all the admin for that program. They'll be running up to 700 pairs each year. So again, that's quite a large program. In our research, we're seeing, most programs typically are under 100 pairs, usually between 20 and 50 pairs, but some programs get quite large. RE, I'm not sure if there's anyone still from RE. We had someone who logged in, but I know had to leave early. They're running with 1,300 participants a year, so another really big program. A typical program structure looks like this. Take applications, there's some kind of matching process, there's some training, there's a program introduction. Halfway through, you get people back for some kind of review and a program close. The events can be done either face-to-face or by webinar. Either seems to be relatively effective. So if we go back to some of the obstacles that were revealed in our initial research around, we're not sure we've got the resources, and an acknowledgement that to fund mentoring or to do mentoring effectively, you really need funding. So the feedback we constantly get is the organisations that are going the kind of unstructured route, where they're just putting their mentor bios up on their website and letting their mentees self-select. We had someone on the call this morning in our webinar who was doing it that way, and the feedback was, it's almost like you need someone to blow the whistle because they're just not starting, and that's the feedback we get. So we think that formal structured programs are more effective in your kind of organisation. So, and that means you do need to have the resources to do it properly. People talked about the difficulty of commitment, needing to engage stakeholders for the long haul, not just the mentors, but people on the board and the volunteers, and then just all the issues around implementation, having the time and resources to do that. We think there are some fairly obvious solutions, and to an extent people in the research were coming up with these for themselves, saying, well, we really need to look at different funding models to actually build the business case and get some money in to pay for mentoring. We think that commitment or lack of commitment is actually a communication issue. So we know that if you have a compelling case for mentoring, and particularly if you have that higher order purpose, both mentors but partners like sponsors will commit for the long haul. So I'm involved in programs where sponsors have been in for up to their 10th year. They come back every year. They love it. One of the things you might want to think about with sponsors is, if it's appropriate, get them involved as mentors and mentees. So let them participate in the program and put some of their people through it. We'll talk more about sponsorship in a minute. And another area to really think about is embrace technology. So we think that, the virtual mentoring route is probably the way to go, particularly for some of these millennials who really do want, everything instantly and online, particularly resource materials and training. So what does it take to run a successful mentoring program? If you go to this website, ismpe.com, you'll see there are 6 kind of standards around best practice mentoring in an organisation. It really boils down to these 3 things, if you like. It's around having a clear purpose and making sure that everybody involved in the program understands the objectives and everybody's on the same page around that. That you have good training. I mentioned the stats before. Only 1 in 3 will work if you don't do training. You definitely have to have some training. And support. If it's a structured program, you need to support people through the process. Otherwise, you'll find you'll get a high dropout rate. And administration is most often the thing that derails a program. So, if you're a mentor or a mentee and you're feeding back to the program administrators that something's gone wrong and you need help, but you're not actually getting an answer to your email, you're not going to be a happy little bunny. And so, following up on those things is critically important. And 9 times out of 10, when you get a contact like that, people can be helped and get their mentoring relationships on track. In selling your program to the board, I think I've hammered this point beyond belief now, have a compelling purpose. You really need to start with, why are we running this program? And if you don't have a good answer to that, I'd suggest don't even start. It's not a nice to have. It's, it's too intense and too difficult to do well to just do it as a nice to have thing. So really work on that. Work out which stakeholders do we need to get on board. I probably don't need to tell you that. You're all working in associations. You understand how important it is to get particularly your volunteers involved and, get them committed and feel like they've played a part. You do need to have a really clear and well-researched business plan. No point going to the board with, we think it would be a good idea to run a mentoring program without all the information that you need around what it's going to cost, how long is it going to take, what are the outcomes you're going to measure, all of those things. If you design well, we suggest too that you start small and let it grow rather than necessarily trying to invite everybody in. Use professional resources if you can. If you really have no money, you can go and get resources online, but they are hard to find and you'll spend a lot of time looking for them. What's my last point? Under my chat box. So really just don't start until you know you're ready. Better to delay than to fail and to not do it well, because it can be brand damaging if you don't do it well. I do want to just talk a little bit about the funding models. So some of the models that our clients use and that we're seeing, and again, we're surveying people to ask them which of these they're using. Many people charge mentees. Now, if it's students or even graduates, sometimes that can be difficult, but there is a benefit in charging because it gives people more skin in the game and they'll stay more committed for the long haul. We've seen fees anywhere from $0 to $2,000 or $3,000. Obviously, the more you charge, the more value you need to be giving. So if you're charging in the thousands, you probably have quite a few program events supporting the mentoring with guest speakers and the like, and maybe some additional training. Another source of income is sponsorship. There are many program-specific partners out there for whom the feel-good factor of mentoring is a real draw card. If you give them an opportunity to get involved, they really do like to. They do want to give back. It's part of their corporate social responsibility programs. The kinds of sponsors that we're seeing are either suppliers into a profession or an industry, or perhaps something that you may not think of, who might be insurance companies, super funds, where they're really looking to reach out to young professionals and looking to engage with those people. And grants. Adriana will tell you it's not easy to get, but it is possible if you have a very compelling case. But you do need to put some lead time in for that. We have a range of products that we sell. We also have design services, so please look to us to help you if you're looking for that kind of support. But we've also got lots of free things on our website, so please go and look at that. We've got some articles, blogs. Please participate in our research if you haven't done so before. It's really helpful, and we'll share the findings with anyone that participates. If you want a demo of any of our products, we're more than happy to do that. I'm going to throw it open now to questions and general comments. So what questions do you have? Anyone interested in sharing what they're doing? I'm sure others would love to hear from you. Has anyone had a program that they've tried to get up and it hasn't worked? Would love to hear from you as well. Questions? Very quiet, this group. We love questions. Please ask us questions. Annabelle, I can see your mic's open. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, and I'm not sure if anyone's come across this. We're looking at a program, and we've had small, unsuccessful programs run out of a state or a particular territory, and we're trying to find a national approach. It sounds like online is probably the easiest way to facilitate it, but if you're running online, is there still value in having those face-to-face local relationships?
Is there anyone else that would like to answer that question from their experience before I jump in? Doesn't look like it. We don't have anyone from the AVA on this webinar, Annabelle, but happy to connect you with them. I think there is value in running the local events if you've got volunteers who can do it or you've got staff who can do it. Obviously running things online is easier, but I think people appreciate the face-to-face events, particularly if you can get a guest speaker along and maybe give the mentors some extra value as well and cover some different topics.
Yeah, I do think they fell down a little bit trying to get mentors. We have an enormous need, from the mentees and the juniors, but trying to find professionals with time to carve out is a little hard too. That's what I understand from initial feedback.
Yeah. And so if you minimise the amount of time that mentors have to spend, particularly at events and training, that's another reason we develop the online training. So we give people what we consider to be enough to stop them making some really bad mistakes. But generally, you can't get people to commit to coming along for a day of training. I'd love to have people in a room for a day of training, but they won't give that time. So
yeah,
you really I'd like to be practical. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I'd like to just make the distinction that the online platform isn't necessarily forcing you to have virtual mentoring relationships. It's designed to automate processes and make admin life easier and streamline a lot of those processes to reduce time load and to have everything in the one platform. So you can still have a national program and have people meeting face-to-face and match them state by state, for example, or city by city, but have a national online platform that's managing that entire process.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And one of the reasons I actually point that out is because that then answers the next question, which is Chris's question. which is what's the largest size you could reasonably do with the right software and resources. Well, there is no largest size really. I mean, in the States, there are user examples of Cronus using thousands of participants, and as you saw with the Cherie Blair program, there's several people going through those. So with the right resources and the right software, you can go as big and as grand as you need to. One thing I would say though is as you get bigger, you definitely want to segment your participants into potentially career transition points or particular segments of your membership, just to make sure that each purpose of each program that's rolling out has a real impact and functionality behind it in that sense.
Yeah. The other part of Annabelle's point, which is around attracting mentors, we have an article on our website about that, so feel free to go and download that. It's just some ideas about that. But I think it's a communication issue. You've got to build the case. What's in it for them? What are they going to get out of it? And most of the programs we're involved with, we don't have too much trouble attracting mentors.
A cool technique that we use with some of our clients is we tell them to interview their mentors or their mentees from their first program, and in particular when it goes well, and use that as your marketing material to onboard mentees and mentors. But once again, quoting the AVA program, they had hundreds of mentors flocking in to actually be a part of the mentoring program. So it's really about your marketing message at the end of the day. So if your marketing message is on point, you will get the mentors coming in and understanding that they're going to get just as much out of it, or they're actually feeling good about the fact that they're giving back.
Yeah. In our tracking, we find that mentors get as much out of it as the mentees, and they don't expect that. So they come into the program because they want to give back, and they leave the program really surprised that they've actually walked away with a great benefit themselves.
So Anne-Marie's the next question down, and she's asked, how do you establish trust between mentors and mentees if the program's online? That's a good question, and it's interesting. We find in our research that face-to-face versus virtual mentoring have both pros and cons. So when you don't have the awestruck factor of somebody with more experience sitting across the room from you or across the table from you, it allows you to ask more high-risk questions and to delve further into some difficult questions or difficult conversations. So often actually trust is a lot more there in some respects in online relationships. But obviously it takes a little bit longer to develop that rapport between the mentor and the mentee. If you've got a good length program, somewhere between 9 to 12 months, that should not be an issue.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Next question was from Kay. Yes, administration can be burdensome as the program grows. That's where, if you get the program admin software, it makes it a lot less burdensome. Some of our clients outsource the program administration to our team, so that's a possibility as well. So they just have to be involved in being at the events but not having to chase people down. And we're building, a team of people that do that all the time. Adriana's answered a question around that. Any more questions?
Did anyone have any questions around funding models or developing a clear purpose behind a mentoring program? Okay.
All right. Well, we might draw this to a close. Thanks so much for joining us today. Hopefully it's been of value to you. We've enjoyed ourselves anyway. Anytime I can get to talk about mentoring, I love it. I'm on my soapbox, so we always have fun. If there's anything that you would like to ask us, please feel free to be in contact with us via email or telephone. go explore our website. Lots of stuff there you can use, hopefully. If there isn't anything there that, if there is something that you need that's not there, just ask.
Yeah, and we'll be sharing the slides and a recording of this webinar at the end as well. So probably later this afternoon, you guys will get an email with that as well. So feel free to reach out and ask any questions, and you can revisit and check out any of the information that we talked about throughout the entire webinar.
So thanks for coming, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are. Bye for now.